behalf of PIDE, I welcome you. PIDE believes on strong collaboration, and COVID give us a strong opportunity to manage webinar. We have interacted with various Nobel laureates and economists and sociologists all around the globe. PIDE is a research think tank. It is under the Planning Commission of Pakistan. And we have a limited academic as well. We produce graduate in development economics, in public policy, and in development studies. And this topic of rural development, it is very close to our heart, because you know that still our official statistics shows that around 63% of the population in Pakistan still reside in the rural areas. And the topic is more interesting because in Pakistan, poverty is a rural phenomenon, because 80% of the population, poverty concentration, that is in rural areas. And we have a quite diversification in rural areas. For example, we have certain dense population, if you look Punjab, and we have certain provinces like Balochistan, where we have around 50% of the area, but population is just 5 to 6% that is residing in Balochistan. So we might require different policy for Balochistan and other provinces. Pakistan started certain programs in rural development, like for example, in 90s, we have certain structural development programs that do certain electrification and road infrastructure and education, investment on education, etc. But mostly they failed. And in 2001, we started certain poverty elevation program like microfinance, etc., etc. But still, I think they have not given us certain desired results. And if we look the example of China, China have focused more on rural transformation rather than rural development. And right now we are doing a project with China where the project is being executed in 4 countries: Indonesia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, and China. And in China, they believe that we have certain indicators of rural transformation. One could be because you know that we have a strong agro base. Although agriculture share in GDP has declined, right now it is 19%. But if we look in exports, still our export are mainly dependent on agriculture sector. So China believe that rural transformation can be happened if we able to increase the share of cash crops in agriculture. So high yield crops, it could be one way of rural transformation. And another could be the rising share of non-agriculture sector. You know that in rural areas, if we have more SMEs and more non-farm activities, so it can give a good sense of rural transformation. And then third could be the structural transformation, through which a strong, good urbanization that can give certain pull factors in the rural areas. So I will not go in more detail. So we from PIDE, we welcome you, Luis, we welcome you, Martina. So over to you. We would love to listen to you. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start with Martina. Thank you very much.
Yeah. And so I'll share my screen to start with. Okay, please let me know if you can see it.
Yes, we can.
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much for the invitation. It's a pleasure to be here and talking with you. I hope this will be interesting for the audience. This study that I'm going to talk about is part of a project we started with IDB Invest and with the support of 2 researchers from the University of Notre Dame in the US. I just want to give 2 words about IDB Invest in case the audience doesn't know. So IDB Invest is part of the Latin American Development Bank, which is the Inter-American Development Bank. And in particular, it's the private sector arm. So its objective is the private sector development in Latin America. So the IDB Invest provides financing as well as technical assistance to private sector companies. In fact, this study is the result of a technical assistance and a partnership with a client in Guatemala. I'm gonna give you a little bit an outline of the presentation. I'm gonna go through the context. Then I will explain the intervention. Then I will talk about the experimental design and the policy implication. So the study is not yet completed, so unfortunately I don't have results to present, but I will talk a little bit about some of the challenges and lessons learned during the implementation. Okay, so let me give a brief introduction. As I said, this study is the result of a partnership with a large food producer and franchisor in Guatemala. And we ran a randomized control trial of an intervention that was aimed at support and strengthen one of their distribution channel, which is a franchisee of small stores that sell chicken and meat products all over Guatemala. I see this project as having two components. The first one is the treatment, which consists in a digital training program administered entire through a smartphone application, and then its impact evaluation. So the beneficiaries are these Casal de Pollo Rey that are small store that, as I said, sell cooked and uncooked chicken and pork products, but they also can sell some staples, grains, vegetables, and eggs. They are part of this bigger anchor company. Okay, the owners are both men and women, but we found that most part is constituted by women, about 65%. This women's average income is about $828, which according to the National Institute of Statistics of Guatemala is lower than the basic basket. The average age of the owners is 37-year-old, and on average they have 2 children. These are, as I said, small stores, and this is we can see it that about 36 of them do not have any employees. Half of them only have 1 employee, and the rest have 2 or more employees. They especially serve clients in the neighborhood. In fact, 56% of the clients go to the store by foot, and this was a great advantage for them during the lockdown and COVID period, because while supermarkets were forced to close, they were able instead to be open, so they had a relative advantage during the COVID period. The owners of these Casal de Pollo Rey are also called aliados, meaning like allied. So if you hear me talking about aliados, you know that are the store managers. This is a map of the distribution of the aliados in Guatemala. We see a concentration in Guatemala City, but they are spread across all the countries, including rural areas. Okay, so now why was training needed in this context? First, we observed disparities in hygiene and store exterior, and then there was a stagnation in the Casa del Pollo in the store sales. We also notice high level of store turnover, so meaning many store closing down each month and new ones opening. And the new ones, on average, have lower sales than old ones. We also find by analyzing the administrative data of the anchor company that sales were the main determinant of the franchise survival, and business trading was also associated with higher sale. So that's why, together with the company, we decided to strengthen this channel. Here it's an example of actually two Casa del Pollo. The first one is a very good Casa del Pollo, which is very close to the standard that the main company desires. We see that there is a good paint and it's very tidy and clean, while the second one, it has ruined paint and it's not much decorated. And so basically the objective for the main company would be to have all the Casa del Pollo look like the first one. So now I'm gonna go explaining a little bit about the treatment, which is the digital training program. So we designed this training program to upgrade the skills of the franchise stores. To do this, we hired a consulting company that conducted a diagnosis of the franchise store business practices and needs. The diagnostic phase entailed interviews with corporate executives, online focus group, and telephonic interviews with about 50 franchise owners. Then, based on the results of the diagnostic phase, we passed to the content development, which resulted in 24 micro videos that we also called capsules that last between 1 and 7 minutes. So you can imagine that it's very heuristic and kind of intuitive learning. The topics reflect the needs of the stores that were mainly business management, patrimonial security, equipment maintenance, hygiene, food safety, and also since many of them are women, gender empowerment. So the structure consisted in 7 weeks duration, during which the 24 capsules that we developed were released gradually. At the end of the quizzes, of the video of the module, there was a knowledge quiz to test if the beneficiary had understood the content of the module. This digital training was accompanied by 3 one-to-one video meetings with an expert business consultant. This also was carried out online, but we can consider it as an in-person component. Then we also distributed to all of the beneficiaries a workbook that they received physically. So the anchor company was in charge of distributing it to the stores, where they could find additional exercise and summaries of the content. Then we also developed an incentive scheme that was fundamental for the take-up and persistence, that basically envisaged a prize scheme, personalized reminders, and also credit for data usage. The implementation, we implemented actually we started to design this program in 2020. As I said, we had a phase of diagnostic and content design. Once the content was designed, we piloted it with 15 stores and that was September 2021. After the pilot, we made adjustment, and then we scaled the intervention to the entire beneficiary sample. The intervention started in last October, and it was supposed to last until December. However, since December is a very busy month for the stores, because in Guatemala they celebrate Christmas, and Christmas is a very busy time for food sellers. So there was a little bit of delay in people taking the course, and so we allowed for more time in order to maximize the participation in the program. And finally, just last week we had the graduation. That was an online event where the people that finished the program were awarded a certificate and were publicly thanked. For us, the graduation, we define the graduation as people that watched at least 70% of the content, and that did at least 2 sessions with the expert consultant. Here on the side, you can see the app, how it look like with the modules. Picturing. Okay, so now I'm gonna go into the experimental design of the evaluation. What we wanted to do was to test the impact and effectiveness of this program on the learning outcomes, on the practices, and on profitability and sales of the stores. So our sample consisted in 498 owners of Casa del Pollo, and we randomized them into treatment and control, where the treatment received the digital training and the control did not receive anything. They will probably receive it later. We stratified the randomization by sex, year of opening, region, and sales at baseline. This will allow us to test for heterogeneous impact. The timeline of the experiment was the following. We conducted a baseline in September for 4 weeks in September, October 2021. And we have 2 kinds of data collection. We have phone surveys to the owners, and then we also are collecting picture data. So we are taking pictures of the stores, the inside and outside, as the one that I showed you before. Then with the baseline data, we did the randomization, and then we had the treatment starting, and we will have the follow-up starting in May. And again, it will entail the phone surveys and the picture data collection. So our theory of change is that the time spent watching the content and the treatment completion will lead to improvement in the knowledge of the best business practices of the store managers, better knowledge. We hope that will result in the adoption and implementation of better business practices that which ultimately will lead to sales, to higher sales, higher profitability, and a lower level of exit rate. To test for these outcomes, we built indicators that are time spent watching videos and number of training modules that are watched. Then with the survey data, we build 2 indexes. One is the knowledge index, and the other one is the business practice index that we can build because we have in the survey, there is kind of an exam asking for the knowledge. And then thanks to the pictures that we are taking, we will be able to construct an indicator that it's actual business practice, because we will analyze the picture, and based on the analysis, we will also be able to build an index of objective business practice. And finally, we will test sales through the administrative sales record. Just let me tell you a bit more about our data sources. As I said, because this is a digital training program, we have all the data. We are able to download all the data of the consumption of the training material, thanks to the log files that are produced by the app. And from there, we can see the time spent watching videos, the number of times a person watched the videos, how did they do with the question at the end of each module, and so on. Then we have the data from the baseline and the follow-up surveys, which include demographic information, and also an exam with true-false knowledge questions, and yes or no questions on self-reported practices. Then we have the franchise store picture. We are gonna take pre and post picture on the exterior, interior, hygiene, freezer context, and menu and price board. And finally, but not least important, we have the sales administrative records. This is a great really data source, because it's from the anchor company, and they have a very good registry of all their sales. We have 5 years of data, 5 years old data, and it's very disaggregated for product, of course, store point, and we have also high frequency. We can even have daily data, although we will use monthly data, but there is the possibility to even narrow down. So the contribution of this study is that basically this, to our knowledge, this would be the first study to measure the impact of digital training on physical businesses. In fact, there are many studies that measure the impact of in-person training programs. Sorry, there is another here, but in-person training program. And we only found a study that's a randomized controlled trial that tests digital training, but with, and that was in China, but with e-commerce traders. So it's a bit different. In addition, the other big contribution is the quality of our data, because most of the study that we found use sales data from surveys, which is self-reported and prone to result measurement error. While, as I just explained, we have the anchor company sales data, which is very, very accurate, plus the photograph, which also is an objective way to measure the adoption of business practices. Then, once we will have the follow-up data, the objective will be to test the effect of the training on the learning and business practices. We will do this via the intention to treat. But also we will, to account for imperfect compliance, we will also use the local average treatment effect. While for sales, since we have a different data source, we will use a difference in different approach. And because we have, we stratified our sample, we will look for heterogeneous effects on period of opening and sales at the baseline. In particular, we think there might be heterogeneous different effects on gender, because usually in developing countries, women have a very high household burden, and so they are less likely to engage in this kind of trainings outside work. And the thing that this is digital and can be taken whenever a person wants, we think that might be particularly beneficiary for women and head of households. So this is the balance table with data from the baseline, with the outcome we want to test, which is the practices index, the knowledge index, and the sales, as well as the variables that we use for the certification. And we can see that there is no statistically significant variable, as we expect in a randomized design. So this study can have a very interesting policy implication because we will be able to measure the extent to which digital training is an effective instrument to transfer human capital to business owners and firms in developing countries, and the extent to which micro-entrepreneurs can learn practical business knowledge online and translate them into their business practices. And finally, we can conduct a cost-effectiveness analysis to compare the effectiveness of digital training compared to in-person training. So now just a few words on the challenges and lessons learned. The first result that we have is the people that graduated from the program, and we have about 50% of the beneficiaries that graduated from the program, meaning that they watched at least 70% of the content, and most of them are women, 76%. We found that it's very hard to keep people engaged in this kind of training, but especially these people from this segment, because they are very busy people. They're owning a store, they have families, some of them have more than one job, so it's very hard to have people engaged. And we saw this from the beginning. In fact, even the installation of smartphone application to the application where to take the training entailed a significant effort in tutoring and follow-ups. But also we think that the incentive scheme we designed with prizes, with personalized reminders, with WhatsApp groups to always send reminders was fundamental to ensure take-up of the treatment and then persistence. For the data collection, since we did the phone service, we found a challenge that I think it's very particular of the context of Guatemala, because since in Guatemala they have very high extortion rates, a strategy to avoid extortion is to change phone number. And since we did the phone service, this was a bit of a challenge, and we were constantly updating the registry of the phone numbers to reach people. But I think that having the partnership with the anchor company that was very motivated and interesting in supporting this franchise channel was fundamental in overcoming these challenges and in completing the program. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Martina, very much. Very interesting project. Without further ado, I'm passing it over to Luis so he can present his study. the studies he coordinated about water collection devices. Once again, I want to encourage everyone who may have questions, don't be shy. You can add your questions to the comments box, either to Martina's presentation or to upcoming Luisa's presentation. We'll discuss at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Fabrizio. Pleasure to be here. Thanks a lot for the invitation. And I hope I can bring some valuable inputs for everyone to think about policy and program evaluation, programs target to family farming, to food security, and to rural development. Well, my name is Luis Campos. I'm from the Brazilian Federal Civil Service. And in the last years, I have been involved in one of the main programs targeted to rural development in Brazil, which is the Cistern program that provides water tanks for families, not only for to storage water for consumption, which was the first approach to this program. It started in 1999, but then the program evolved and it began to offer water tanks for food production and also for rural schools. So now it has some distinct lines of intervention, but this evaluation focused specifically on cisterns for food production, because until then we didn't have a rigorous evaluation conducted. So even though we know that the cistern was very, very important for food security of the beneficiary families, we didn't know which were the impacts. We didn't know, we didn't have evidence about cost effectiveness to compare with other possible interventions from the government. And more important, we know that we could have lost some synergies with other important programs targeted to family farming, targeted to rural poor families. So this evaluation has this objectives. Different from Martina, I will not bring much information about the study because we only had the baseline conducted, and because we have the pandemic, and because we have some government crisis in Brazil, the second wave of collection will start only in some months. Now in 2022, the baseline was conducted in 2018, but I prefer to bring a vision about someone who jumped into this evaluation. I'm not a research. I see myself more as a policy manager, so I have to manage this evaluation from the perspective of the federal government and in line with the consulting company that was hired in a bidding process. But I guess there are some valuable inputs on how to plan an impact evaluation and some warnings that you need to have when you start a research like that. So given that we have only 20-25 minutes, I prefer not to have one formal presentation because it would take me more than 20 minutes to develop a full presentation, and I need to do it more fluently with you. I need to do this more in a dialogue. So I'll share one presentation here, but they have some pictures, and I prefer to talk fluently with you. So let me look here. Can you see the screen, my screen?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So this is just for us to have an idea. This is the main picture of a cistern in Brazil. Okay, so they built this infrastructure near to the house of beneficiary families. So you have this part to collect the water, and then the water is stored here in this construction. It is digged in the hole, so they can have water here, and this is the cistern that will allow families to produce here around the cistern. And this program is mainly focused on food security, because we have lots of families in the rural semi-arid Brazilian regions facing food insecurity, facing poverty. So we need to help families to jump in this first step to improve their production, focus on subsistence, focus on self-consumption, and we hope that in a second moment they will be able to go to commercial to market their excellent production. But we need to provide a help for them to have improved their own food security. So with the cistern, they also receive a small piece of technical assistance, some trainings on water management, and an exchange between different regions, between different agricultures. And the program has one specific gender component. We try to bring women family farmers because we know that they are in charge of this more production involving vegetables and small animals, while the men normally go to the bigger crops in the property. So it ends being an important impact in gender balance in rural families in Brazil. So with the water tank itself, they receive other instruments, and they receive a part of that we call productive factor, that is a kit, a tool to help them improve their production techniques and their production routines. So this evaluation, it was also a randomized control trial. We had established control and treatment groups, and it was interesting because we had to count on family farming organizations, because they are an important part of the program implementation. The federal government only funds these organizations, but they are those who goes to the field, who mobilize families, who build the cisterns in the properties. So we need them to help reaching the families, even though the randomization was done by the technical consultants that conducted the evaluation, and we have the help of a big university here in Brazil who designed the study and who did all the randomization process. But we need initially the family farming organizations to reach the families and to see which families would be willing to participate in the program. So we have to deal with this relationship with the organizations. And in the beginning, they were very skeptical about the evaluation, because they asked, but why are you wanting to do this? We know that this program works. We know the impacts of the programs. And before the evaluation begins, we need to convince them that it was important for us to define the real impacts, the magnitude of the impacts, and we need to test different interventions, because we could integrate this program with another program that we have. It is basically a cash transfer for poor family farmers, but these programs did not a dialogue, and we need this evaluation to test different interventions to see which one was the most effective one, if the cistern intervention itself or the cistern intervention integrated with the cash transfer program. So in fact, we have two treatment groups testing these two different interventions. So this will be very useful to define the best model to reach the families. So I'll just share with you another another picture here. Sorry, it is in Portuguese from an official government paper, but let me explain here the randomization process in this evaluation. So we define to randomize at the community level. So this is one important question. 63 municipalities were part of the sample, and each of the municipality would have to choose some communities to be impacted by the evaluation, and other communities to be the control group.
Luis, sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
are you trying to? We only see the picture from the cistern still. I'm not sure if you're sharing another screen.
Sorry.
Maybe want to share another one.
Let me see what happened here. Okay, sorry. Just, I guess it was automatic. Just let me try to, just 1 second.
No
I'll
problem.
stop and now I'll share it again. Okay, so can you see it now?
Yes, now it's good. Thank you.
Okay. So I'll start explaining again. So we decide to randomize it at the community level. So one municipality has lots of rural communities. So in this initial moment, each municipality would have to choose which communities would be part of the program and which ones would not be. So this was a very challenging negotiation with the family farming organizations, but it worked. So in this moment, the organizations would have to consider all rural communities that are part of one specific municipality. And first, they would choose one community that would receive the program for sure. And they would have to say, okay, these rural communities will not receive the program. They will not be considered anyway. So this specific community to receive the program would not be part of the evaluation. And they have some criteria to choose this, for example, the most vulnerable one, the most distant one. So they will receive the program and they won't be part of it, won't be part of the evaluation. But they would also have to choose from 6 to 9 communities that would be part of the randomization process. From these communities, part of them would be the treatment group, and part of them would be the control group. And in each community, the researchers would make a randomization to select participants, 6 participants that receive the program to be interviewed, and 6 participants, 6 families that would not receive the program and would be part of the interview. So this is the basic design of the randomized control trial. All these families that would be part of the evaluation, they were selected from a unified base in the federal program that we call CADE Único, which is the unified register for social programs. And from this unified registry, the researchers made all the statistical operation to be sure that these 2 groups were equal from the beginning. So you would be selecting different families, but from the same indicators. So it would help to guarantee this initial balance of the families. So this was the design, and from this design, we collect the baseline in 2018, and I'm gonna give you some quick information about this baseline. You know that around 3,000 respondents, and we had an initial universe of almost 4,000 respondents. So we have some lost during the research, and this is important because you need to take care of the substitution lists, because in many cases families did not respond. Families were not rich in their houses. Sometimes some communities were very difficult to reach because of the rainy season, because of the country roads that were not in a good conditions to be used. So and one specific question is because in the control group, the data from the national register, it did not mention if these families had enough space to have a cistern built in their backyards. So we need to make a first question to these families if they had enough space, if they had the opportunity to receive a cistern, if they would be willing to. And in some cases, when families in this initial approach responded that they didn't have enough space or that they didn't want to have a cistern, we excluded these families because it would mean that they couldn't receive the program in the future. So this is one complicated question that emerged because when we realized that this information would be necessary and it was not available in the register, we had to make this initial approach in the families from the control group. So this was an important methodological challenge in the beginning of the evaluation. So the questionnaire was another challenge in this research because it was very huge with many sessions, and this was a fight that we from the government had with the university researchers because we think that a big questionnaire would make would be a higher risk to have bad information collected from the families, and we need to negotiate a balance between the government and the researchers, because normally researchers want to know everything about the families. They want to maximize this opportunity to reach rural families, because we know it is quite challenging to reach 3,000 families in 9 different states. So the geographical area of the evaluation was very, very big. And this questionnaire had sections to capture which were the main crops of the families, the animals they raised. It has sections to have information about family demography, family income, not only from the crops and animals, but other non-agriculture incomes. It had a very interesting session on gender empowerment, on climate session too. So it was a very diverse questionnaire, and its duration was around 70 minutes, which is big, and we know that this is only the average. And we also had some moments where families did not want to finish the questionnaire because they were with their affairs. Women have to cook the meals. The husband need to go back to the crops, need to go back to taking care of the animals. So the moment when we reach these families and the time needs to be taken in consideration. Otherwise, you risk having bad data in the last sections of the questionnaire. So this is another very important question. In some of the main data, the average of the area used to agricultural activities, it ranged around 8 hectares.
Luis, sorry to interrupt again. By any chance, are you presenting those slides, or are you just reading from your text?
No, I'm just reading because they are too big and
no problem.
And just not to focus on the presentation. I need to be more fluid.
Excellent,
okay?
No problem.
Okay, so around 8.4 acres of the average area of the properties. The almost half of the families raise chickens, which was the main. It is very important in Brazilian to provide food securities of the families, and especially in some regions where there is a water scarcity. So it is very hard for you to raise bigger animals. So chicken is one of the main strategies from the programs to improve food security. The main crops in this properties were beans and then corn, which is also important not only to feed the families but also to feed the animals. So this is another important information. And another important information, we had a scale to measure food security, and almost 60% of the families had been worried in the last months that they would have no food, not enough food to feed their family. So this is a very important indicator to measure food security. And in average, you had a good balance between control and treatment groups. So we know that these indicators were around the same for these two groups. So in the second wave of data collection, you will probably have the possibility to check any difference before the intervention ended. So now we know that the families did receive the cistern, and all the families that did not receive, you will be able to compare. Anyway, we know that there's this challenge in this evaluation because we plan to have the second wave around 2 years after the treatment families received the cistern. But because we have some political stability in the federal government, and then the pandemic came, so the second wave will be done around 4 years later. We know this is a big time lapse to be considered, especially because in Brazil we have one challenge regarding government coordination. So it is expected that many of the families from the control group had already received some kind of water infrastructure in this last 4 years, and this would make them not comparable anymore. So this won't be something that we're going to check, because when we go back to these families from the control group, we will need to check this with them. So I guess we have some more minutes. I would like, so because we don't have the second wave results, I decided not to focus here because we didn't know the data enough to compare and to check the impact of the program. So I would like to use this last minutes to share with you some lessons learned from this process, and I think they're available, especially for the managers in the government who are involved. So on the bidding process, when you want to hire a consultancy company or a university to do data collection, be very careful with the price of the proposals, because when we analyze the proposals received, we see that some of them were unpracticable. They were very, very cheap. And from our price research, from our prior price research, we saw that, okay, this will end up in a very poor quality research. So we decided not to take this first one, because normally you take the cheapest one. But so it's very important for you to research this price before, so you can have an objective comparison when you receive the proposal from the consultancy companies. Weather conditions is something very important. So you have to plan exactly when you want to reach the families, because in some periods of the time, it can be harder to reach them in rural regions. So be careful about this. The size of questionnaire, from my perspective, it is better to have a small questionnaire, and you can guarantee better information. You can guarantee that families won't be impatient to respond, and you have to consider this also because you will return to these families. So imagine in the second wave, some families, oh, you were here 2 years ago and you make my day harder, so I won't collaborate with you this time. So we need to be careful about this. Coordination with other governmental agencies and some NGOs, because it is important to guarantee that the control group will not receive a similar intervention. Otherwise, you won't be able to compare the two groups. I know this can be very complicated. This can have some ethical issues, but if we don't have this guarantee from the beginning of the evaluation, maybe we have to reconsider the pertinence of the evaluation. So this is something very important. The negotiation of the ministry or the executive secretaries to guarantee political priority to do evaluation, because this means guarantee a budget, and normal impact evaluations can be costly. So this is also important. But we think you see the program is scale up. The program reach more than 200,000 families in Brazil, more than $400 million of investment, almost 10 years of implementation, and until now we didn't have a rigorous evaluation. So this shows the challenge that we from the government have to plan evaluations from the beginning of the programs. And if we do not do this, it is very difficult it will be more challenging to design this evaluation. So just for you to have an idea, when the university researchers started to do the meetings with us to plan the evaluation, the first thing they asked, okay, please could you share the theory of change with us? And we simply told him, sorry, but we have no formal theory or change. We have lots of legislation, we have some official documents, but the program did not have a formal theory or change. They did not have some outcome and impact indicators established. We simply know that we want to improve food security, we want to improve gender balance, we want to improve production diversification, but we didn't have established real and objective indicators. So if I could sum up just one thing in this conversation, it would be plan your evaluation from the beginning. Otherwise, it won't be more challenge to start an evaluation after 10 years of program implementation. So this won't be some consideration. One last consideration, besides this impact evaluation, the federal government in the last year, it made another evaluation for the national credit program that supports family farming. But this evaluation was done by the Ministry of Economy, and the sister program evaluation was done by the inline ministry, the Ministry of Citizenship, who runs the program. So it was interesting to see the different approaches of these two evaluations. But sometimes the help of the Ministry of Economy can be very important to help inline ministry, to help sectorial ministries to design and to conduct evaluations. And there were some very important inputs from this credit program evaluation. Specifically, this evaluation showed the imbalance of the program between different regions in Brazil, the unbalancing of access, because more stable family farmings could access the program, and more vulnerable and subsistence family farmings had difficulties to access the program. And it also showed that the program did not it didn't have incentives to diversify the production. It only had incentive to focus on the production that you already have, on the crops that you already have. And one of the objectives of the program was to diversify crops. And it's showing that for subsistence family farmings, it is crucial to provide a double strategy. So credit access, but also strong programs to provide cash transfers. Otherwise, if you just have the credit program, it won't be probably enough for these subsistence farmers to formalize their productions, to sell the excedent production. So from this evaluation, we also had very important policy recommendations that are now being implemented by the ministry. So I will finalize here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. I know it was very, very fast. That's why I prefer not to have one formal presentation, but I remain available for any clarification, any questions. And if you want, then I can provide additional and more detailed data. Thank you very much. Thank you, Fabrizio, for the invitation.
Thank you, Luis Campos. Maybe if I would like to have Mr. Shujat Farouk maybe raise some points about the presentations, and then we can move to the discussion. Does that work?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Fabrizio. Very interesting presentation by Martina and Luis. Luis, I have a couple of questions, and then we will open the floor, and we will request to make certain questions, because I am thinking from Pakistan side. In Pakistan, we have around 63% of the rural population, rural households that don't have land, and we have high inequality in land. I think the Gini coefficient of Pakistan on land is around 0.6. So, and we have a very uneven distribution of land, because there are more than 10 million small farmers, and there could be around 2% of the elite households who hold around 28% of the total land. So how, for example, in this unequal phenomena, how we can bring this rural development and we can promote the agri-based economy. And second, you know that in agriculture, market matters a lot. In Pakistan, we have certain incompetitiveness in agriculture market, especially on production side, where whenever we have a higher production in agriculture, usually prices went down because we don't have certain insurance mechanisms in market. And there is monopoly, you may say, of the middleman who mostly hold the market. So how because you know that production could be one side, but whenever we are talking about the rural development, we want to listen you that what certain reforms or interventions are required on the market side.
Okay, can I answer now, or we need a round of questions, or what do you prefer?
There are, I think there are two questions also that have been mentioned in the chat box. Fabrizio, you will read, or I read these questions?
I can read those.
Okay.
Yeah. So we just take all questions. We just go through all the questions, and then the speakers will provide the answers. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So we had the two first questions. I think they're more addressed to Luis, but Martina could probably comment on the market mechanisms as well, if she feels comfortable. Okay. So we had the first question from here. I have Mr. Darjat asking us to talk a little bit more about the devices used for harvesting water.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So thinking about, you know, how it's built and how it works. Talk a little bit more about the function and, you know, maybe the costs, Luis, I don't know, and why they're so practical and so widespread. So about the program itself for harvesting water, and also about, you know, how it's used for efficient irrigation. So that was one question. We have another question here from, let me see. Okay, it's more of a comment. So from Mahmoud Khalid, in Pakistan, there are some useful rainwater harvesting projects in addition to, as the backdrop to new building designs in the northern part of the country. And that was required after the earthquake of 2005. So his comment is that, when the infrastructure is redesigned from scratch, the acceptance to change how scarce resources are used is greater. Which is, sometimes you need to have a situation where, there's an emergency so that people mobilize to get something done. So maybe Luis can comment on that as well. If there was some kind of situation of crisis in Brazil that triggered the expansion of cisterns, or maybe failed policies before that. Okay, let me see if there was another question at the beginning. Okay, so this it's from also Mahmoud Khalid, saying that he's had two Pakistani experiences. One where social mobilization played a key role in rural projects, identification and sustainability, and another one where local governments provided development funds to local citizens. That is a question that could go both to Luis and Martina. In your opinion, what works better, given your experience? So either local governments providing development funds or social mobilization, getting things done. So those two alternatives, you can talk about that from your experiences as well. Yeah, so those are the questions from the floor. And I would just like to add a question to Martina from my side, since most of the questions were concentrated on the cisterns, on the water collection devices, is that maybe she talks a little bit more about, how the mobile phone application was used for this experiment, because it seems to me that it's an excellent device to actually be able to track people once they change phone numbers all the time. So if you have the app and the log information from the app, that is a great way around the problem in randomized control trials, which is to be able to track the people in the panel because they change contact information all the time. So, how can an app improve that? And you said that they had problems downloading and installing it. So how can we go around that? So those were the questions. You can answer them, Luis and Martina, in order. Okay, if you Fabrizio, forget something, I'll help you out with it.
Okay, no, there are lots of questions. I'll try to give an overview, and I remain available if you want to have another moment for us to discuss in details how the program is designed and how it is implemented. It would be a pleasure for me to share this with you, because in fact it's a consolidated program, and it is recognized by FAO, by IFAD as a very good practice to promote rural development. So around the first questions about the land inequality, yeah, and about the marketing, I guess, from the government perspective, these are questions that are not analyzed in profundity in this program, because our focus is to promote food security, and the sister programs provide this in a double edge. From one side, providing the first cistern to storage water for human consumption. So the family, in fact, can receive up to 2 cisterns, one for human consumption and another for food production. So our focus is to promote food security, and the program did not have a mechanism to monitor whether these families would be marketing part of their production. This is not the focus of the program, and there are some discussions whether it should be, but in fact it was not decided yet. So before thinking about marketing the products, there is another initial step, and it's very hard in Brazil to guarantee this food security for the families, because Brazilian Northeast faces severe droughts historically because of geographic conditions, because the oldest policies focus on big lakes and big reservoirs, but we saw that these policy only promoted water access inequalities, because these big reservoirs, they were in landlord's properties, in big establishment properties. So it didn't work. So by guarantee one cistern for family, you give autonomy to this family, and this family will not depend on the political will of the local authorities. And talking on local authorities, all the funding from this program is provided by the federal government. The local municipalities help to reach the families, to mobilize the families, but the initial and big incentive comes from the federal government. We know that some states or some regional governments provide additional funds, but you have to guarantee from the federal government. These families, the biggest strategy for them to market part of their production is in local informal markets, and they also exchange food a lot. So between family neighbors. From our perspective, it would be very interesting to help these families to start marketing their production in the food schools program, which is one of the main strategies in Brazil to help family farmers to market their productions. So this would be one initial strategy, but you need to organize them in small cooperatives, because they won't have enough production themselves to sell. So you have to join some families to provide a steady and enough production for local schools. I guess from devices, it is important because the cistern is defined as a social technology. It is not an engineer device. So a social technology is by definition something very easy to build with accessible materials. And normally the family also helps in part of this process, which helps in the acceptance of the technology. These technologies were developed in partnership with the NGOs that operate in the semi-arid region. So it was not designed by the government. The device was designed by the social organizations, and the government accepted this and provide some regulations to standardize the construction. So this is one very important, and the price of the cistern is already predefined by price research. And for each region, you have a predefined price, which helps a lot in the implementation, because you don't have to bid the cistern. They have this prefixed price, and this is what the organizations will receive. Another important aspect, we don't have private companies operating this program. All the implementation of the program is provided by NGOs. So you have grants, you provide grants for these NGOs, and they implement the program. And local governments and the federal governments, we monitor to check if the implementation happened as planned in the grant. So I guess from my side would be this. I would share the answers with Martina too.
Okay, so I have a question about working with private or public sector, right? Did I get it right?
Yes, Martina.
Okay, perfect. So I think it's two different experiences, and there are pro and cons on both sides. In this case, working with a private sector company was, I think, as I said, very successful because they were very invested in the project. They also supported with funds. They had a counterpart in this project, and basically they had a couple of people that provided support to us, so they were very fast in responding and in helping and in implementing the project in the field, let's say. However, something that was a bit challenging working with them is that you know, because the private sector wants normally to move fast, it was a bit tricky for the scaling up, because obviously they would want the training for everyone. And we had to bargain on the time of the follow-up, and we have to be constantly very aware of what they are doing, because they have many initiatives going on. And so every time we have to be super careful and aware with some of their initiatives that they can contaminate our experiment. For instance, we actually were planning to have the follow-up in June, but since they are starting to thinking about a training, not directly to the store owners, but the ones that they call it gestores. So are people that are also involved in the relationship with these stores, and they wanted to train them. We had to anticipate our follow-up because we were afraid of contamination. So these are the pros and cons of working with the private sector. Another thing is that they were really super open with us, with the team, in sharing data. And this is something that might not occur with other actors, right? Other private companies. Sometimes private companies can be very jealous of their data for confidentiality. We were very lucky in this case. Of course, we signed confidentiality agreements, but also this is something that worked very well in our case. About the mobile phone app, so basically the firm we partnered to develop the content of the training also already had this app that is called Entre Redes. They already had developed it, and so we used their app. There was also the possibility of designing a brand new app, but it was of course much more costly and time length. But yes, I agree that it's a very powerful instrument because as you said, Fabrizio, you can download the data, and we are going to leverage with the data that the app produced. And also it was very useful in preventing contamination in the control group, because the app, you need a code to access it, it verifies your profiles, etc. While, for instance, if you distribute I don't know, books or printed material, it's much more easier to have contamination in the control group. So yes, I also received a question privately. Maybe I will answer because I think it's relevant. They asked about if we are accounting for household factors and also for literacy level, how we are dealing with it. So basically, we are controlling for basic household factors such as gender, age, also literacy. And we, of course, are also number of children. So household size, we would have liked, of course, to include much more in the analysis, but as was Luis was pointing out earlier about the length of the questionnaire. I was muted, so we had really to minimize the length of the questionnaire to the strictly necessary, because it's always a challenge to collect data and to keep people engaged during a questionnaire. But in this case, being small entrepreneurs, it was really a challenge to have their attention and time in completing the survey. So we had to minimize on household characteristics. About literacy, in our sample, 50% of people had completed secondary education. So half of the sample had not. But I think a key of this of the training we designed was the simplicity. So it was really very easy video, practical, that really did not entail for a high literacy rate or high level of instruction. Basically, anyone could learn from that and benefit. Yes, there were a couple of more technical modules, for instance, in the financial management, but it was one module in 24. Most of the modules were like how to have a client satisfied, how to, what should be the temperatures of the fridges, or how to have a balanced work-life. I think here the key, especially if you're not dealing with high education segment, is to keep it easy. And also there are papers on this. It's called heuristic learning. There are many papers on, no, not many, some papers that test this. So I recommend to check this.
Thank you. We have few minutes, so if anyone want to make any question or comment, Darjat Saab, Fahim Saab, Mahmood or Ubaidullah, please raise your hand. I would request admin to please unmute, so we have a last round of question, please.
Oh, Farouk.
Yeah.
If you allow me, there's a very interesting question in the chat box from Ibrahim Sied, and okay, maybe Martina or Fabrizio can comment too, but I think this is one very interesting, and he asked how policy can be evaluated and what will be the standards positionality evaluators where there are no such policies before. If I understood well the question, I think, well, before a policy is designed and implemented, we need to have a previous examination to see whether we have a policy problem in fact or not. So any justification for a new policy that will mobilize budget, you have some objectives indicators before that will give the political legitimacy for this program to be designed and to be part of the governmental agenda. So this is one important question. Normally for rural development, we normally have important data from the agriculture census, which is collected in a regular basis in many countries. So you can extract some important indicators to frame the policy problem you want to address. And maybe in some cases, as in Brazil, we have a unified register for social programs that collects data also from rural families. So for instance, we had an indicator of water availability in Brazil. And from this indicator in the national registry, we define the goals for each year. We define which regions are more urgent to receive the cisterns, the quantity of the cisterns. So this data helps us to better frame the policies. And also we have some important and standardized standard indications to measure food security. FAO provides a scale to measure food security, and normally you collect this data. You would have to use this data for one region specific, and then you monitor as you implement the program. So you have different strategies to have these standards. And of course, evaluation is about judgment. You will also have to position, is this magnitude of indicator adequate or not, which is our goal, where we want to arrive, and this is based on judgment.
Thank you, Martina. Sorry, thank you, Luis. Any last question, please? You can raise your hand, and I would request the admin to unmute you if you have any question. Mahmood Saab. I think no. So it was a great learning for us. It was a great learning for us. Yeah, Ghulam Shabir Saab. Please unmute the, Ghulam Shabir Saab, please, over to you.
Yes, sir. Kindly go ahead for a formal closure, and then in the end, I would like to thank our invaluable speakers and contributors, sir, on behalf of the student fraternity of Public Policy Program.
Thank you, sir. From our side, from PIDE side, it was a great learning for us. We are highly obliged to Fabrizio, Luis, and Martina for a very thoughtful session, for a great learning, and we would love to collaborate in the future, and we will inshallah invite you with more piece of similar learnings so our country can be benefit. Shabir Saab, over to you.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Indeed, we cannot thank you much, Martina, Fabrizio, and Luis, for the overall contribution that you have made today to promotion of the learning, the practice side of learning, for the fraternity of this institution and of very high repute in Pakistan. We are really, really grateful to you, and we will remember this contribution for lifelong. And alongside this, I must thank my teacher, Miss Angela Khurram, actually being a source of inspiration in order to get these practice-oriented professionals on board for conducting this very, very good learning-oriented session. Filled with the practical experiences. Thank you very much, Shujat Farooq Saab. And last but not the least, I would like to thank my colleague Awais Bhatti for actually supporting this entire happening with the background. I'm so very grateful to all the colleagues from abroad, as well as to all the faculty members in here. Thank you very much. We really loved this session, and we really learned a lot. And we really value your contribution. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Bye-bye.